Everyone on the fourth floor felt a little sorry for Evelyn. She'd been the secretary there longer than anyone could remember. She wore the same gray cardigan until the elbows went thin. She took the bus, she ate the same lunch, half a sandwich and an apple, at the same desk out of the same waxed paper she folded and reused. When the executives ordered in, someone always set a spare plate by her typewriter, the way you do for a person you assume can't spend $12 on herself. She'd smile and say she was fine, and they'd nod and quietly think, poor Evelyn, worked her whole life and never quite got there. What none of them knew, not the vice presidents in their Italian suits, not the men who parked leased convertibles in the good spots, not a single one of them, was that Evelyn could have bought and sold every executive in that building twice. When she died at 91, the estate lawyer read the number out loud and the room went silent. $7 million. From a secretary who never earned more than a modest salary a single year of her life, who left every last cent of it to a scholarship fund for children she would never meet. Evelyn was, by a wide margin, the wealthiest person who ever worked in that building. And she spent 40 years making sure not one of them could tell. She wasn't lucky. She didn't inherit it. She never picked a hot stock or caught a lottery ticket. She did one quiet, almost boring thing, on purpose, every 2 weeks for 4 decades. One habit that looked like getting left behind from the outside and was building a fortune on the inside. And here's the part that should bother you a little. You have worked with an Evelyn. You've walked right past her. You may have felt a little sorry for her yourself. And the whole time, she understood something about money that the people in the corner offices never did. Today, I'll show you exactly what Evelyn did, why almost nobody does it, and why that one decision quietly beat every six-figure salary in the building. If you're ready to stop making excuses and start doing the math, subscribe and like this video. It costs nothing, and it tells me to keep making these. Chapter 1. The habit, stated plainly. Here's what Evelyn did with nothing hidden in it. Every payday, every 2 weeks for 40 years, she took a small fixed slice of her check before she paid a bill, before she bought a thing, and used it to buy a few shares of stock in the company she worked for. Then she did the one thing almost nobody has the patience to do. She never sold. Not when the market crashed, not when a neighbor bragged about a hot tip, not when she could have finally bought the nicer car. She bought and she held and she let the dividends buy more shares, which paid more dividends, which bought more shares still. That's it. That's the whole secret. There is no second half. Most people do the exact opposite without ever deciding to. Money comes in and it leaves just as fast, pointed at things designed to lose value or things designed to be seen. Evelyn pointed hers at something that grew quietly in the dark for 40 years, while everyone felt sorry for her cardigan. She let her life stay small so her ownership could get enormous. And the gap between the two, the plain life everyone saw and the fortune nobody did, is the entire story. Chapter 2. Why the bosses stayed broke. Now walk down the hall to the corner offices, because this is where it gets uncomfortable. The executives Evelyn typed for earned 5, 10, 20 times what she did, and most of them died with a fraction of what she left behind. Some died with less than nothing. How? The same way it always happens. The big salary came with the big life to match. The house that announced the promotion, the car traded every 3 years for the newer badge, the club, the second home, the watch that cost more than Evelyn's rent for a year. Every raise got spent before it cleared, because a raise to them was permission. They weren't rich, they were high income, and those are not the same thing. They're barely even related. Rich is what you keep. High income is just a bigger river running through the same leaking bucket. The man in the corner office had the salary. Evelyn had the ownership. He rented his lifestyle from the bank by the month. She quietly owned a piece of the entire company he worked for. On paper, he was the success, and she was the cautionary tale. On the balance sheet, it was the exact reverse. And the balance sheet is the only one that ever tells the truth. Chapter 3. This actually happened. Now, you might be thinking this is a nice little fable, a story I made up to make a point. So let me introduce you to the real woman it's built on. Her name was Grace Groner. She was a secretary at Abbott Laboratories in Illinois. In 1935, she bought 3 shares of her company's stock. 3, for about $180. Then she did nothing. brilliantly for the next 75 years. She never sold. She reinvested every dividend. She lived in a tiny one-bedroom house, bought her clothes at rummage sales, and walked most places. Her friends assumed she was scraping by. When Grace died in 2010, those 3 shares, plus 75 years of quietly reinvested dividends, had become $7 million. She left all of it to her old college to send students she'd never meet to places she'd never go. $180, $7 million. The only ingredient she added was time and the refusal to touch it. Read that again, because everything the financial world tries to sell you is engineered to make that one boring sentence impossible to hear. Chapter 4. The math that should bother you. Let's take it off the page and put it in your life because the number is going to be bigger than you expect. Forget 3 shares in 1935. Say you put $200 a paycheck, call it $400 a month, into a plain, boring index fund. Not a genius fund. The most average, unremarkable, whole market fund there is. And you reinvest everything and you never touch it. At the market's long-run average, in 40 years, that $400 a month is worth around $2.5 million. $2.5 million from an amount most people spend on things they can't name a week later. The subscriptions, the upgrades, the rounds of drinks, the deliveries. Not from a windfall, from a leak pointed in the other direction. So the real question was never, how do I find $7 million? It's much quieter and much harder than that. And it's the thing almost everyone gets wrong the second their income goes up. Chapter 5. But I don't earn enough for this. That's the thought you're having right now, so let's kill it. Because the entire point of Evelyn is that she didn't earn enough either. By the standards of everyone around her, she earned almost nothing. Grace Groner was a secretary. Ronald Reed, who left $8 million, pumped gas, and swept floors for a living. Not one of them out-earned their way to wealth. They out-held everyone. The problem was never the size of the shovel. It's that most people fill the bucket and then knock it over every single month, pointed at a lifestyle instead of at ownership. Someone earning $200,000 a year who spends $205 is poorer than a secretary who quietly invests $40. Income is the river, wealth is the dam, and you can start building the dam this week on almost any income there is, starting with the very next dollar that hits your account. We're right around the halfway point, and this is exactly where most people click away, 1 minute before the part that actually changes something. Don't. If this is landing, drop a comment with the one money habit you're going to change this week. Writing it down is how it stops being a video you watched and starts being a decision you made. Chapter 6. The Invisible Superpower. Here's the piece Evelyn understood that the executives never bothered to. When you own a share of a real business, it pays you a little slice of the profits, called a dividend, just for holding it. Most people take that cash and spend it. Evelyn took every dividend and bought more shares, which meant next time she got paid on more shares, which bought more still. It starts embarrassingly slow. For years, it looks like almost nothing, a snowball the size of your fist, and then, somewhere out past year 20, the thing you can't feel while it's happening takes over. The growth starts coming from the growth. The money starts making money faster than you ever could by hand. That's the trick the corner office missed. They spent their careers trying to earn their way to wealth. More hours, more title, more salary. Evelyn let her ownership do the earning while she typed and packed her sandwich and rode the bus. One of them worked for money for 40 years. The other one, quietly, had money working for her. Guess which one ended up free? Chapter 7. The Cost Nobody Sees. Now let me be honest with you, because this habit is not free. It just doesn't cost money. It costs something people are far less willing to pay. It costs you the way the room looks at you. For 40 years, Evelyn was the one being pitied, the one in the worn cardigan while the office traded up. She heard the small comments that were really questions. She watched people quietly decide she must be struggling, and she said nothing, because there was nothing she could say that wouldn't sound like a lie or a brag. Think about how much that actually takes. Every single day, choosing to look a little behind in a world that treats looking ahead as the entire point. Most people simply cannot do it. The fear of looking like you're failing is stronger than the desire to actually win. So they buy the car and the watch and the appearance of a rival, and they pay for it with the one thing they can never earn back. Evelyn made her peace with being underestimated a long time ago. She'd done the honest math on what being admired actually costs and decided that being quietly, privately free was worth infinitely more than being seen. Chapter 8. She wasn't cheap. And here's where everyone misreads a woman like Evelyn, because the habit was never about being cheap. Watch where her money actually went in the end. She wore the same cardigan for a decade and reused her lunch bag until it fell apart. And then wrote a check that put 100 strangers' kids through college without blinking. Ruthless on the things nobody would remember. Generous, enormously, on the thing that would outlast her. That's the distinction the whole philosophy hangs on. Money spent to look a certain way is gone the second it leaves your hand. The glance, the compliment, the moment of being seen. Over before you're back at your desk, money spent on something real is still working long after you're gone. Evelyn starved the budget everyone could see and fed the one nobody could. She wasn't a miser sitting on a pile. She was building something on purpose, quietly, the entire time. Chapter 9. The 2 retirements. Let me show you what all of this actually buys with 2 people who started in the very same building. Take one of Evelyn's bosses. Call him Mr. Harlan. Corner office, the big title, a salary that could have bought a dozen of Evelyn's paychecks. Harlan spent it all, the way you're supposed to. The house, the club, the cars, always half a step ahead of the next raise. For 30 years, Harlan was obviously the one who'd made it. Then the company reorganized, the way companies always eventually do, and the titles and the salaries stopped. And Harlan discovered that a big income with nothing behind it isn't wealth. It's a performance that ends the day the checks do. He spent his last years anxious, downsizing, doing math at 2 in the morning. Evelyn barely noticed the reorganization. Her wealth was never tied to the job. The job was just the small, steady engine that fed the machine. She retired on her own terms, in her own time, and never once felt the knot in the stomach that Harlan felt every month for the rest of his life. Same building, same decades, opposite endings, and the one who looked like he was winning the entire way was quietly losing from the start. Chapter 10. The starting line she built. But the biggest thing Evelyn built, she never got to see finished, because it didn't arrive in her lifetime. It arrived in strangers. Somewhere right now, there's a kid whose parents could never have paid for college, sitting in a classroom a secretary they never met paid for. That kid will graduate with no debt and start their whole adult life from a place they didn't have to claw toward. A starting line moved forward by a woman in a worn cardigan who decided, 40 years early, that a few shares every payday mattered more than a nicer car. That's what the quiet ones are actually building. Not a number in an account. A different starting line for someone who isn't even born yet. The executives built a lifestyle that ended when they did. Evelyn built something that outlived her and will keep going long after everyone who pitied her is forgotten. And if you want to start building the same thing, you don't have to change your whole life this week. You do one thing. The next dollar that comes in, a paycheck, a raise, a bonus, anything at all, you send a fixed slice of it somewhere it can grow, before you can feel it, before it ever gets the chance to become normal. And then you do the hardest, most boring thing there is. You leave it alone. Outrow. So tomorrow, somewhere, a woman like Evelyn is going to ride the bus to a job where everyone quietly feels a little sorry for her. She's going to eat her packed lunch, wave off the spare plate, and let every one of them keep believing she's the one who never made it. And she's going to be, by a distance none of them can imagine, the freest person in the building. Here's the only question that matters. When you picture being wealthy, are you picturing the thing, the car, the house, the watch everyone can see? Or are you picturing the freedom, the quiet, the not being afraid? Because you can buy the look of the first one on credit tomorrow. The second one, only Evelyn's boring little habit has ever actually delivered. The loud ones are performing a fortune, the quiet ones are building one. And from the outside, you genuinely cannot tell them apart, which is exactly the way the quiet ones like it. If this gave you a different way of thinking about money, subscribe to The Boring Rich. We study the patterns that separate the quietly wealthy from the visibly broke. No hype, no get rich quick. Just the boring habits the math actually supports. Be an Evelyn, buy the boring share, hold it for 40 years, and let them think whatever they want. Boring is underrated.